We are getting a window into how a new generation of Republican activists talk when they think no one's listening, and it's really ugly. Politico obtained more than 7 months of Telegram chat messages between about a dozen young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. Now, MSNBC has not independently reviewed those messages, but what Politico published today shows the conservatives openly praising Adolf Hitler, making celebratory jokes about gas chambers and slavery and rape. For example, when the chair of Arizona Young Republicans asked if the New Yorkers in the chat were watching an NBA playoff game, New York State Republican Chair Peter Junta responded, "I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch monkeys play ball." We should note that when Politico asked for comment, the Arizona Young Republican chair declined. Junta claimed the release of the chat is part of, quote, a highly coordinated year-long character assassination led by an opponent, I think a kind of internecine opponent, a fellow conservative. Out of 28,000 messages obtained, Politico identified 251 bigoted epithets in the chat. There were many more outrageous examples of racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia than we could or would want to repeat here. Here's the thing. These are not like, we're not talking about kids here. The age limit to the group was 40. Many chat members work inside government or party politics. One's a state senator. Another works in Trump's small business administration. Politico reports that since they began making inquiries, at least 4 members of the chat have lost their jobs or had job offers rescinded. Now, this kind of virulent hatred on display here has become quite familiar in Trump's very online Republican Party. I mean, all you have to do is find it is open a website called x.com, right? And you can see it everywhere. That one's run by Donald Trump's biggest political donor. Or you can see Trump administration officials and official U.S. government accounts on social media exulting in sadistic edgelord cruelty and celebrating hatred and prejudice. But now it's also becoming clear that the people who are running the Republican Party at the ground level are just immersed in this cesspit of bigotry. And also, it's not just, abstract. They're acting on it. I mean, this is happening at the staff level during the Republican administration that has been waging a full-scale war on civil rights law from the first day in office. Jelani Cobb is a staff writer at The New Yorker, dean of the Columbia University School of Journalism, author of a new book out today, 3 or More is a Riot, Notes on How We Got Here, a collection of excellent essays. And he joins me now. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I mean, at some level, this is not surprising.
No.
Particularly because you can kind of see, I mean, it all sounds like stuff you see out in the open. Mm-hmm. But it does seem important to me that, to connect, the New York Times did this great piece the other day where they were talking about the highest levels of government and all of the officials of color, particularly black officials who have been fired.
That's right.
Lost their jobs.
Yeah.
It's not really an abstraction.
Right.
This kind of bigotry and animus and what this government is currently doing. There, you see it right there.
Yeah. And also I would add to that, other things that are patently obvious. We have had this incredible repressive attack on immigrants, even people who are in the country legally. These are overwhelmingly people of color who we see being thrown to the ground and yanked out of cars and all these. And at the same time, there's this curious benevolence toward white South Africans who are invited into the country. What gives?
Special status.
Yeah, special status. How does that work? I'm old enough to remember the alleged S-hole countries. I'm old enough to remember when Hillary Clinton was pilloried for saying that Donald Trump had aligned himself with a set of people who would be considered deplorable. But we see this kind of language, this kind of grab bag of bigotries, the kind of dueling homophobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism, racism, all of the kinds of worst traits. And it's been emboldened, has been facilitated by the movement, the Trumpist movement.
One of the things that struck me in reading this piece is, there's all sorts of private chats people have. And people, sure. I want to be clear that, people say things in private that are different than what they say in public.
Sure.
And all signs of people have private communications that would be embarrassing to be made public. But these people are, coordinating this in the context of a shared political project.
Right.
They're not talking smack to each other about fantasy football. Mm-hmm. They are people with power and influence. And it really does strike me that, this idea, it has become an affirmative good. J.D. Vance was just posting, refusing to condemn them. The culture of the right now really does embrace this. It's
sure.
Whatever the opposite of political correctness is in their minds is affirmative cruelty and racism exalted.
Yeah, you remember when we saw the young woman who referred to the black child, baby, by the N-word, and then there was this massive wave of money generated for her online in response to being castigated for that. And so this is not uncommon. It's not surprising. The thing that I will say about that is this, though. We have a right to privacy. We have a right to express, ourselves among our friends and our peers in a way that we wouldn't in a professional environment, certainly, sure. But this is into the locker room talk territory.
Yeah, totally.
Where there are things that, are so outrageous that they should be concerning to you.
Like if I wanted to see monkeys play with the ball
exactly.
and go to the zoo.
Irrespective of the context in which it is uttered. And moreover, these are people who hold political power or attached to a political apparatus that impacts the lives of people, of Americans of various kinds of backgrounds.
I also feel like, I guess I've gotten in my middle age stodgy about this or something, but I think shame and taboo are really important. I think virtue signaling as opposed to vice signaling is important. And I actually think it's really important for people to be told by other people, hey, that's disgusting what you said. Hey, that's offensive what you said. What you have here on the right these days is a culture that is the opposite.
Right.
That revels in it, right? That this sort of rebellion against censoriousness or DEI or you can't say anything anymore very quickly turns into we love Hitler.
Right.
As maybe originally a kind of ironic take, but then not so ironic the more you say it.
But I wonder if it ever was that.
Right, yeah, fair point. Yes,
because
I'm being charitable.
Right, but even when you say this, okay, it's censorship, you don't want to prevent people from being able to express themselves, right. Sure. But what people are actually asking for is impunity.
That's right.
As in, you can say these things and there is no social consequence for them.
And that social consequence, in some ways, is like what civilization is made of.
Right. Right.
Honestly.
And so in my middle-agedness, Chris, I will see your demand for kind of maybe common decency and say that I believe that we should bring respect back.
Yeah.
Just a basic level of respect.
Jelani Cobb, a man I deeply respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Epstein case has many details and open questions. Our timeline today focuses on the key facts and developments, starting in March 2005, when local police in Palm Beach, Florida, began a probe into Epstein, investigating reports of abusing victims as young as 14. The local case led to Epstein's indictment for a single count of soliciting prostitution in 2006, not the more serious alleged conduct. In fact, the lead detective in the Palm Beach office referred the case to the FBI to look at the more serious crimes, and those federal investigators began probing allegations. In 2008, Epstein reached a deal with the Bush administration's federal prosecutors to take that local Florida conviction for soliciting prostitution with an adult and a minor. Epstein got a lenient, short prison sentence and an unusual agreement that the Bush DOJ would not prosecute Epstein further or 4 of his co-conspirators or any others. Bush DOJ prosecutors also agreed to keep the deal secret and not inform Epstein's victims about it. A judge later found the Bush DOJ's secrecy deal was illegal, violating those victims' rights. So the facts show from the start, Epstein got this unusual protection from the government, in this period, a Republican administration, Bush. And Epstein was a rich, powerful figure. He had ties to people in business and politics. He hired a Republican-connected lawyer, former independent counsel Ken Starr, and served just 1 year in that deal. Now, another 9 years went by, and then the Miami Herald reported an Epstein expose on the allegations of his conduct and that Bush-era prosecutor who cut the sweetheart deal. That investigative report gained traction, partly because of a tie to Trump, who promoted the very prosecutor, Alex Acosta, to his cabinet. The headline at the time hammering how a now Trump official gave a serial sex abuser the deal of a lifetime. And that public pressure from the Herald drove a new federal probe. Internal DOJ reviews would show Acosta had poor judgment in the case, and that the blanket immunity offers for Epstein and others were just indefensible, leading to a fairly swift federal indictment of Epstein on far more serious sex trafficking charges. And the pressure drove the original prosecutor Trump had promoted, Acosta, to resign around this time. And in a key decision, a judge denied Epstein bail, forcing him to be incarcerated before any trial. It was just over a month later, August 2019, when Epstein was found dead in his cell. The situation was suspicious. Officials there broke several protocols. Epstein was a high-profile detainee. He'd been placed on suicide watch, which was then quickly lifted. Guards failed to do required inspections the very night of his death. And a lot of questions were hanging over all of this. So let's go even further ahead, all the way up to 2019 and what happened after that. Because key videos went missing. Trump Attorney General Barr even admitting the prison made mistakes then, but claiming that he personally reviewed prison video which showed no one entering the cell. And with Epstein dead, prosecutors turned to a co-conspirator who might have benefited from that original Florida case being shut down, what I told you about. They went ahead and indicted Ghislaine Maxwell for helping Epstein's sex trafficking, a case brought by a career prosecutor, Maureen Comey, daughter of former FBI Director Comey. And her work continued on when the Biden administration took over. She won Maxwell's conviction and this 20-year prison sentence. Then, during the 2024 campaign, the questions and theories about Epstein's crimes and special treatment were heating up on the right. It was a problem for Trump, given that he promoted the original prosecutor, that he oversaw the DOJ, which failed to answer questions or have transparency about whatever happened in that prison cell. So Trump tried to go on offense, vowing to declassify and release Epstein's files. And his attorney general took over that message and advanced it in office, now infamously claiming that she had the client list on her desk, which she later contradicted because shortly after, the DOJ released an alternate video from the prison. But the key video that shows Epstein's cell door is either lost or hidden. It's never been released. And Bondi released the now infamous memo that said they wouldn't provide any other Epstein documents. So Bondi went from saying there was a client list to there wasn't. She was lying then or lying now. The DOJ memo then said there was no other Epstein info that was going to be released, which ignited that firestorm of criticism we all lived through. And given the broken vows, that couldn't hold. Trump soon contradicted his own DOJ's memo and saying he would try to get grand jury material released, but those are limited transcripts. A lot of the big Epstein information is in the Trump DOJ. They could release it anytime. One judge has denied this. And as the Trump administration's contradicting claims drew more heat on its secrecy, the DOJ then sent this former Trump criminal defense attorney to interview Maxwell in prison and then transferred her to a better prison, an apparent reward for the one person doing any time for Epstein's indicted federal crimes. Your reaction to this reporting about the apparent unusual or special treatment for Maxwell?
It's offensive to the survivors. You know, the survivors are at the center of this, and they often get forgotten. They were in the front of the steps of the Capitol. They talked about being abused and raped at the age of 13 or 14, about having to go recruit other junior high girls, knowing that they would get abused by Maxwell and Epstein. And they found it so outrageous that there was any talk of giving Maxwell lenient treatment, given what she had done to those women. And so I just, on an emotional level, am outraged by this. And I don't understand how this has become a partisan issue. You have survivors who are saying that they want justice.
The administration doesn't seem to care about the substance, the ethics, as you put it, or a term they throw around a lot in Washington, the quote optics. Because as we reported, they rushed to respond to that unusual interview with this special treatment transfer. Can the Congress do anything about that?
We absolutely can. And the first thing we need to do is to have the full release of the Epstein files. And here's the state of play on that. We have 217 signatures. We need one more signature to force a vote in the House of Representatives. It's an open secret that if we get that vote in the House of Representatives, you will have 50, 60 more Republicans defect because they're not going to vote against the release of the files.
What do they call it? They call that log rolling or something? Where in the Congress it's like everyone's ducking it, and then if it happens, everyone jumps on it.
Exactly. You know the terminology. But we've got Adelita Grajova, who a few weeks ago wins her election in Arizona. It's not close, 70 to 30. It's a blowout election. And for the past 2.5 weeks since September 23rd, the Congress has literally been shut down. We didn't come back to vote on the pay for troops, which is ending on a Wednesday, but the president had to rearrange money at the DOD just to pay the troops. Why are we shut down during the Congress? For one simple reason: Mike Johnson knows that the day we have votes, Adelita Grijalva gets sworn in, and then we have a 218 signature, and we get the vote in the Epstein files. So we're going to get this done.
Just to slow you down, you're saying once that's sworn in and you're back in regular order, presumably post shutdown, then you all but have the votes.
Once we have votes, whether it's during the shutdown or after the shutdown, that day, Adelita Grijalva becomes the 218 signatory. And then 7 legislative days after that, we can force a vote in the Congress, and we will have the votes on the files. But they want what they're hoping, and they've hoped this time and again when they shut down the Congress during the recesses. They're hoping if they just delay this, maybe this issue goes away.
Yeah. And you said, I said log rolling, you said 7 legislative days, a type of day. So we both get one strike on jargon, sir. Let me turn your attention to this CBS report, which was pretty astounding from an investigative view. No indication that when the Trump BOP and DOJ went in there, when Epstein was first found dead, that they ran fingerprints or DNA tests inside the cell. So that's the evidence response team. They didn't, according to the documents reviewed by CBS, ever run those tests. Is that suspicious? And when we look at this misconduct, I want to be very clear with viewers, there could be mistakes and failures by the then Trump Bureau of Prisons that don't involve Epstein being killed. That's one of the questions under investigation, but could have just involved other failures that they didn't have a lot of interest in getting into. So they didn't really do a thorough probe. That's the implication of CBS. At the same time, as you know, the DOJ then was under Democratic control for 4 years. The Inspector General report, as I understand it, was ultimately finished under the Biden era, and it doesn't seem, from what we can tell, that either party running the DOJ at the time has been very thorough about this, been, shall I say, interested in whether it ultimately found errors of any kind by the government, which is why we don't usually trust the government to investigate itself. Your response on that, and specifically on the Biden DOJ part?
Well, there are obviously questions, and I don't think anyone is saying that DOJ under Biden, under Trump, or frankly, for decades since these women haven't had justice, has done a good job. That's why people are saying, let's have the release of the files. I mean, the survivors who I've gotten to know now personally have been denied justice from the first time that Jeffrey Epstein got a slap on the wrist plea deal. And they've not been consulted by Justice Department lawyers. They are asking for these files to be released.
And why is that as compared to other important crimes that get prosecuted? Do you have a core answer of why?
I think they're rich and powerful people who were involved, and they think that they basically had one system of justice and didn't get care about these women's stories. I mean,
so you're saying it's as bad as it looks, and
joining us now, U.S. national editor for the Financial Times, Ed Luce, and Arkansas soybean farmer Scott Brown. Scott, the hits just keep on coming. I'll come to you in that in a moment. But Ed, first off, explain why Argentina is in need of this bailout.
Well, President Milei has imposed. Remember, Argentina is the most bankrupted country in history. It's defaulted 9 times on its sovereign debt. So this isn't a new story for Argentina. President Milei has imposed this austerity package to bring down hyperinflation. It succeeded for a while, but the hardship it imposed on the Argentinian voter led to his party's defeat in local elections a few weeks ago, in early September, which panicked the markets that he wasn't going to be able to sustain this strong peso, which he's used to keep inflation down, and therefore people started selling the peso. And that led to a run on the currency and the usual balance of payments problems that Argentina has chronically suffered from. And Milei now faces midterm elections in a few days from now, at the end of October. And if he loses those, then this once sort of globally praised experiment, libertarian experiment, will probably be over because the opposition Peronista party are very opposed to these measures. So Trump's giving him $20 billion pretty much with no strings attached and with no possibility of regional contagion. This is not like Mexico in the 90s or the Asian economies in the late 90s or the great financial crisis. This is a problem in one country. And the fact that he's giving this $20 billion credit swap line, but it's free money, at a time when the US government is shut down and when America's farmers are really suffering from the trade war and the close off of their export markets. And on top of that, that China is now buying its soybean from Argentina and not the United States. Well, you know, this has the makings of a really egregious step by the president, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the domestic politics in a moment, but just one more on the motivation here. Why would the U.S. do any of that? Why would they want to save Argentina's economy in that way, Milei's presidency or his ruling coalition? What's in it for us?
Well, so you must remember that Milei is a real darling of the MAGA right. And in fact, the CPAC conference was held in Buenos Aires last December with Milei as the star of the show and many of Trump's incoming cabinet going down there to speak. And Milei, of course, was famous with the chainsaw. He's taken that metaphorical chainsaw to the government bureaucracy in Buenos Aires, and he presented a real chainsaw to Elon Musk a few weeks after Trump was inaugurated. So he is a buddy. He's a great friend. And I think that's part of it. And another part of it is a lot of big American hedge funds are heavily exposed, are heavily reliant in their investments and bets on the success of the Milei experiment. And if that fails, a lot of people who are very close to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are going to take a haircut, as they say, in the markets.
Well, that's interesting. Donald Trump was asked what makes Argentina so worthy of this. Here's what he said.
How is this Argentina rescue package America first? And is this rescue package meant to help President Milei's party in the coming election?
No, it's really meant to help a good financial philosophy where Argentina can, after 20 years of disaster, because it was very successful at one point, and it can be again, like Venezuela. Venezuela was very, very successful, and now it's a dictatorship. We want to help Argentina, and we want to always help ourselves, but we want to help Argentina.
Okay, so Scott, what do you think of that?
Well, I think you've got a bigger problem. I think somebody needs to ask Argentina what they did with the $18 billion that China gave them in 2009 that they haven't paid back yet. So now in 16 years, Argentina's got $38 billion of money to prop their economy up while it does nothing but knife me at home. They filled my orders in China. They will fill the bean meal orders. I mean, in what world is it good to loan people, the worst person in the world, to pay back money to prop up their economy, to protect hedge funds who are deeply immersed in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange? Every morning when I watch the market, they tell me if the funds are long or short, and that tells me what my it's not supply and demand, it's what the funds do. So how is this a good deal for me at all?
What if the administration is giving you and other farmers a bailout? Does that help?
Well, I want trade, not aid. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of boys that's painted in the corner and they're not going to survive without it. But bailing out Argentina doesn't help my market. Sending me the tariff money that me and every other taxpayer in this country is paying for. I buy parts and I buy groceries and I'm paying the tariffs exactly like everybody else is. Sending me that money doesn't fix my problem. I mean, to me, currently all we want to do is throw money everywhere at problems instead of actually sit down and try to fix one. If Argentina fails, okay, they're my second biggest competition. If we're going to make American agriculture great and make it stand on its own 2 feet, then I need my second biggest competitor to fail, because that only leaves me one to fight.
If the market does go to Argentina, say it stays in Argentina or it goes to Brazil as it currently is there, and I know Donald Trump was going to talk to Xi about this, but that meeting, according to Trump, he delayed it or put it off indefinitely. Does it come back to the U.S.? How does it come back to the U.S.?
I don't know that it does come back. I mean, you look at China spent billions of dollars in South America building infrastructure. They're building a railroad through Peru. I mean, they're vested in this deal. And then we got mad Friday and told the Chinese off and cost us 20% of the market Friday because beans went down 20. We had actually got to a good basis Thursday, actually to a positive basis. We were all excited, like, wait a minute, this might work a little bit. And Trump got mad at China and made the big tweet about China, and they took 15 cents off the basis and 20 cents off the market. I don't know that the Chinese are coming back. I mean, I don't know that. Why would you come back with somebody that every day they don't know where they stay? Anytime they do anything, and I'm not telling you the Chinese are perfect, but anytime they do anything, we get mad. There's no stable ground. How do you feed 1 billion people without stable ground?
It's a really good point. Scott, thank you so much. Scott Farmer and Scott Brown. Scott Farmer. That's funny. Farmer. Scott Brown and Ed Luce. Gentlemen, I appreciate it. I really do.
Over the weekend, legendary Milwaukee Bucks coach Doc Rivers forcefully condemned the ICE violence that has taken over his hometown, the city of Chicago. Take a listen.
I mean, it's just awful what you watch and see, and people getting zip tied. I mean, that's not this country. That's not what we're about. It's just wrong. I think every American is good with, if there's criminals on the street, we want to arrest the criminals. My dad was a cop, for Christ's sake. My dad would not be proud of this. I know that. My dad would have a major problem. I couldn't imagine my dad going to work right now and have to protect ICE agents and doing what they're doing. I couldn't imagine him wanting to go to work. I think he'd call in sick.
The footage of children being zip-tied, of innocent people being tear-gassed, of priests being shot with non-lethal pepper balls by their own government has disgusted and shocked a large swath of our country, bringing together everyone from Bernie Sanders to Marjorie Taylor Greene, Zach Bryan to Bad Bunny, Jimmy Kimmel to Joe Rogan, in condemning the massive overreach by Donald Trump. And in the face of that unified opposition to what Donald Trump is doing, what does the Trump administration do? Do they change course like they did with child separation in 1.0? Not this time. This is important. This time they are working overtime to do what we were talking about in the last block, to create propaganda, to skew the reality of what people understand is happening in their names on the part of the U.S. government, on the ground in cities like Chicago and Portland, to selectively edit and make their actions look somehow justified. What you're watching is a video produced with your taxpayer dollars. We'll spare you the sadistic background music that accompanies the images, which is meant to make places like Chicago look like a war zone. We've also blurred the faces of the people featured in their videos who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of any crimes. We show this to you because this is what the Trump administration is projecting to the American people and to the world to justify their increasingly unpopular actions amid what can only be described as propaganda, state-sponsored propaganda. Notably absent are the stories like the one we showed you yesterday, the heartbreaking video of Maricela Rosales Castillo being detained and swept off the sidewalk into a van on her way from picking up groceries to make dinner for her family. Joining our coverage, MSNBC senior national and political correspondent Jacob Sobroff is back at the table. Also joining us, Director of Communications and Public Policy for the ACLU of Illinois, Ed Youngkin, is back with us. Jacob, take us through this.
It's propaganda is the word you used in the last segment. That's exactly what this is. When you watch that video, the DHS, it was almost on cue after we had the conversation yesterday about the videos that citizens on the streets are taking that are driving people and will drive people to protests like the one that's happening for No King's Day this weekend. They put out these videos literally from Earth 2, as you say, a completely bizarro take on the reality of the situation
that they are carrying out all across the country, and particularly in Chicago right now. It's like they're making an episode of Cops. They said we have 1,500 criminals in the caption that we have detained since the beginning of the operation in Chicago. That is preposterous. There is no way that all 1,500 of those people have criminal records other than being undocumented immigrants in this country, particularly if we could run it back, the video outside the bakery, and I can just describe to you what we're seeing because I was there. I was there 20 minutes after this video was taken. That guy in the hoodie is Daniel Cabrera. He's 30 years old. He's a mechanic. He has no criminal record whatsoever. He has little children, and he is on his way to being deported back to Mexico. That is Mario Martinez, who they didn't have a warrant for, the other guy in the red shirt. He ended up having a criminal record from over 10 years ago. His family says he's had a clean record ever since. But it's not like they went out there looking for him. They are indiscriminately rounding people up. And then with their documentary crew, which is, I think, a generous way to describe it, making these slick-looking videos in order to try to convince people all around the country that this is some massive effort to rip the worst of the worst off the streets. And instead, really what they're doing is getting the Maricelas. That same videographer was there with Maricela. You don't see her, 53-year-old Maricela, with her backpack and her hoodie in this video because they don't want to show you that story. They don't want to tell you that she was on her way to pick up meat to make a stew for her daughter, Samantha, and they took her with 12 different agents on the street and a bunch of vehicles. They are crafting and creating a story that is divorced from the reality of the situation on the ground.
Are people buying it?
I don't think so. I think that that's why 7,000 people showed up marching up and down Michigan Avenue last week when I was there. I think that's why this No King's Day protest this weekend will be largely focused around not only the immigration issues on the streets, the fact that they're taking innocent people off the streets, but that people feel like their democracy is being challenged on the streets. People don't look at that and say, that's what it looks like on the streets of Chicago. They say, that's what it looks like when I watch Cops, when I watched Cops sitting at home on a Friday night, eating popcorn with my kids. This is not what's really happening on the streets of America.
I mean, it's why they've lost Joe Rogan. I mean, his words were, these are not the sights and the sounds. If they don't break your heart, you don't have a heart, was his quote. And
Donald Trump knows, we've talked about this a million times, the reason family separation ended was because he said, I did not like the sight and the feeling of the families being separated, responding to Ginger Thompson's incredibly important audio she obtained of those kids in the Border Patrol facility.
Wailing at ProPublica.
Wailing, and the Border Patrol agent said, oh, we have an orchestra here. He wants to create his own images so that he can create his own feelings to convince the American public that the way things are the way he wants them to believe they are, despite the reality on the ground.